Hey guys, Michael here. I'm going to do a review from the April 2021 QAS. I guess it was the in-school one. This is at the request of Ambitious Cub. Great name, Ambitious Cub at Reddit. Asked me to explain two paired questions, which is a regular question and the evidence. I'm going to go ahead and do the entire passage so I can demonstrate to Ambitious Cub and others my approach on the entire um, reading section, which I call a preview strategy. I want to skim, I want to look for information in the text, I want to make sure I understand the introduction, I want to look through the questions and identify information in the questions and start answering those questions while I go back and do the reading of the text. So I'm going to be going back and forth on the page, so I'm flipping back and forth. I'm doing it online, and by the way, I've never seen this one before, so this is totally fresh to me. You're going to hear me think out loud while I kind of process this. And hopefully we'll get the answers right. We'll see if I make any mistakes. That'll be interesting to see. Okay, here we go. I'm going to move to my tablet now. I'm going to use two tabs. One tab is if you're flipping pages, because that's what we need to do here is to go back and forth between the text and the questions. All right, let's go. All right, on questions 11 to 20 on the April 2021 QAS. I think this is the in-school one, not real sure. The student, Ambitious Cub, gave me the link to this, and I pulled it off, not that link, but from the Reddit archive, the big thread, whatever they call it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just do this live. I haven't seen this before. I'm going to keep my thumb on the questions. So I'm looking here. I got questions starting with question 11. I also see there's and I hate charts. So I got to remind myself how much I hate charts, and I got to be prepared to deal with that. Here we go. Passage is adapted from Christian Jarrett. We have an ingrained anti-profit bias that blinds us to social benefits of free markets. British Psychological Society. So I assume this is academic. This is generally an academic press, and so it should be peer reviewed. I'm going to assume that, so it's going to follow the patterns of a peer review. But what do we get from this? It looks like the thesis here is that there's an ingrained, in other words, in my head, it's built into me, anti-profit bias that blinds us to social benefits of free markets. Now, I have a personal relationship with this idea because I run an academic support company for profit. And it bugs me no end that because I pay income taxes, I can't access schools that a nonprofit could access in order to offer my services. But I'm for profit because I understand the benefits of charging people money for something. It creates larger values. So that's just me. Now, when you're doing this, you don't need to think through this. I did out loud, but I'm just telling you that that's my immediate emotional response to this. I'm probably going to agree with this guy. You may not. But the more we can identify information that we have from our prior experiences, our prior knowledge about the topic, the better we're going to do with it. So I get this now. Bam. Okay. That should have taken about 10 seconds. According to the new paper, Journal of Personality. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to read the introduction. I know this is always an introduction. It's not going to give me the thesis. The thesis is going to be more clearly stated at the end, but we'll get there. I'm just going to see what's going on. We view for-profit companies industries upon which capitalism is based with inherent distrust. Assuming the more profitable they are, the more harm they do society. Okay, blah, blah. In fact, I see transitions. Research shows the opposite is true. I'm going to go ahead and read the whole paragraph. It's short. Companies that make greater profits actually tend to contribute more value to society. For example, in terms of their environmental responsibility and corporate philanthropy. Okay, there are a lot of reasons for that, which I can add to this, but let's see what they say. Now I'm going to read topic sentences and maybe concluding sentences and pay attention to things that are in quotations. The authors of the new paper, Amit Bhattacharya, whatever, believe this is anti-profit, blah, blah, blah. To endorse anti-profit policies likely to lead to very opposite outcomes for society they want to achieve. Okay, I get the idea here. Through 7 separate studies. Okay, got 7 separate studies and hundreds of online participants. They present evidence about that. They have the anti-profit bias that's going to be here. And we think about for-profit motives and somewhat super blah, blah. Because the desire for profit seen as selfish intent, we extrapolate blah, blah, blah. We also refer to our mundane zero sum. So that's probably going to be important to us. Experiences such as buying a car in which a seller's profit gain inevitably comes at our loss. Really? I don't get anything when I buy a car. Don't I get a car? We also refer to our mundane zero-sum experiences, such as buying a car, but that's in quotes, so I'm not sure what they're doing with that word. We fail to consider how market forces operate on a massive scale in which for-profit companies pay attention to parenthetical stuff. For-profit companies competing in a free market with informed customers need to innovate, blah, 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 behave fairly. For instance, the first study, participants rated fortune and blah, blah, blah. All right, so we get the first study. There was a clear pattern. The more profitable participants thought a company was, the more they assumed that engaged in bad business practices. Okay, so that's important there. Participants thought that the more money they made, the worse they were. In fact, experts' assessments of the firms show the opposite patterns. Okay, so we have a difference in perspective because this test is always about perspectives. I'm going to assume there'll be a question about that. So what does A think that B thinks that B thinks that A thinks, et cetera, et cetera. In another study, so we get another study, participants were presented with vignettes of different companies. And now they're told they operated for blah, blah, blah. Participants rated the blah, blah, blah. Battery, oh, yes, the dude and his team found they could attenuate, whatever that means. I know what it means. You may not. Their participants' anti-profit bias if they prompted them to think about how a long-term profit motive could encourage greater. In other words, attenuate has to be a means to make happen because they could something their participants' anti-profit bias if they prompted them to think about how long-term. So by making them think in a different way, they got past their anti-profit bias. However, thinking this way doesn't seem to come naturally. So here's a problem. Participants' baseline, blah, 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 blah. Get parenthetical stuff, which isn't the case in the free market. What isn't the case? About for probably were the same was when they were actively encouraged to assume that customers face few choices, have no information about. Okay, so this is their baseline judgments were the same as when they actively encouraged. So I'm going to stop and read this because this seems pretty important. Participants' baseline judgments about for-profit companies were about the same as when they were actively encouraged to assume that customers face few choices. Okay, so if they're told that you don't have any choice and, oh, it's like me and my cell phone. I got AT&T, Verizon, and a bunch of crap. Yeah, I get it. On which of the cases free profit dividends. So that kind of makes sense to me. The findings of ingrained anti-profit bias generally held regardless of participants' economic knowledge or political leanings. This was a U.S. study, so it remains to be seen if the same anti-profit bias will be found in other cultures. Now I'm going to go to the questions. Got this chart adapted from, this is from the same author, so it's going to support the text here. The dashed line is to fit the full data set, 40 industries, whatever that means. So the more profitable relation with perceived profit, perceived so perceived profit, perceived social value. So social value, better if they did not exist. Oh my Lord. So a zero means, all right, a zero means better if they didn't exist. And then this is the perceived profit, a lot more than average. Okay, so all right, we can anticipate this a little bit later. Anti-profit beliefs, how people neglect the societal benefits of profit. All right. The main purpose, this doesn't tell me any information. I'll do this one last, by the way, because I'll learn more about the text while I continue. The second paragraph mainly serves for a reason. Question 30. I'm going to go ahead and do 30 because this is vocab. As I read context, I'll learn more about probably the second paragraph. So let's go back and do 30. First paragraph, blah, blah, blah. This second paragraph. Oh, wait. I already read this kind of. Let's go ahead and just get this one done. The authors of the new paper believe this anti-profit bias, which they explained up here, this, pay attention to determiners and pronouns. Which one? This one. The one that people have endorsing for their legally the very opposite outcome. Erroneous profit belief, systematically worsened economic policy for society, even as they help people satisfy their social and expressive needs on the individual life. So people are against what's good for them. That's what it's saying. Let's see. In the second paragraph, lines 12 to 20, mainly suggests a possible origin of the anti-profit. I'm not sure it gives an origin of it. Highlight consequences. Yes, I think it's probably that. I'm going to soft eliminate A. So I do soft eliminate, skip, and then full eliminate when I know it's clearly wrong. Summarize the scholarly. No, it's definitely not the scholarly consensus. And I don't think they're talking about overcoming it here. So between A and B, I could go back to it and just sort of say, anti-profit lead to the very opposite outcomes of what they want. So it's just saying it's what they do. It's not telling us the origin of it. Okay, it's just talking about the consequence because they do things that's not good for them. So it's not the origin. That's the wrong thing on number 12. Okay, 30 positives. Let's go down. I'm going to read a little bit more because I got to get to line 30 positive consequences. So positive is selfish intents can have positive consequences. So I think we all pretty much know what positive means. In this case, positive is a adjective. It's defining consequences that are positive. And what does it say? Because the desire for profit is seen as based on selfish intent, we extrapolate whatever that means to assume that we can just, this makes us assume, we skip it, we assume that the activities of for-profit companies must be bad for society, disregarding, so there's a transition, the reality that selfish intents can have, all right, selfish intents can be positive, have a consequence that's positive. Certain, no. Appreciative, no, because consequences aren't appreciative. People appreciate, right? Beneficial would certainly be it. Optimistic consequences are not optimistic. So these two are wrong because that's people have those feelings, but we're talking here about consequences. Even though people have the selfish intents, it's the consequences that we're defining here. So 13 has to be C. All right, passage. So I've done 2 questions now. Strongly suggests that one overlooked influence of behavior for profit companies is the fact that, and then we got evidence. So the evidence is from the first through questions. So I'm going to go ahead and get these done, 14 and 15. So I know mark 15, but I'm going to go ahead and just peek more. I got naturally. I could do this one. Let's go up to do naturally. But you know what? This comes later. So since this evidence is only down to here, I'm going to go and oops, I wanted to go here. And let's see, naturally, it can be reasonably inferred from the passage that compared with U.S. people who are critical of capitalism, U.S. people who are supportive of capitalism are likely to be, okay, it can be reasonably inferred from the passage. There was something about how they mentioned in the U.S. Up here. I remember I got to pay attention to that. Regardless of participants' economic knowledge or political leanings, there was an ingrained anti-profit bias. So I'm not sure what we infer from that. This is a U.S. study, so it's about Americans. I'm going to hold off on this one. I'll do 16, then 17, 18. Oh, evidence. Okay, I think these are the questions that the student Ambitious Cub was curious about. All right, then we got, according to the figure, which industries did participants perceive to be the least profitable? You know what, I think I can do this one right away because we got the figure and that seems like straight out of it. So this is the ones that they felt was the worst. This is bad and this is good, right? So people that book publishers, believe me, I published a couple books. Forget it, they're evil. Anyway, profit. So the profit is 0, is not profitable. So here's the money, here's the broke, no money. So what do they perceive to be most profitable? Well, I guess we got 4.5. I'm not sure if it's software companies or pro sports. What do we got here? Book publishers, the least profitable. Pay attention, Michael. Perceived to be the least profitable. So they considered book publishers to be the least profitable. So that's straight out of the chart. So I don't even need to look at these. Based on the figure, which choice most accurately summarizes the participants' views of the societal value of the pro sports industry? So I think I know enough about this passage to go ahead and answer this, since it's not asking me to compare back to the passage. So sometimes they do. So let's go to the chart. Which choice most accurately summarizes participants' views of societal value of pro sports industry? So pro sports they see as highly profitable, but pretty much low value. Okay. So software, oh my God, you guys anybody ever use Apple or Microsoft products? Evil. Anyway, below average social value. Oh God, more social value than cell phones? No, cell phones have more social value. Bah. You don't know anything about the cell phone industry. It's evil. It's a government monopoly that they sold out the towers to people who made millions and millions of dollars. Anyway, so it's not A. Again, if I could create an emotional and prior experience attachment to the reading, I'll understand it better. Industry is relatively little societal value. Society would not be better if the industry ceased to exist. Okay, that has to be true because it's not a 0. A 0 is better if it ceases to exist. It's just inaccurately regarded as having a little. It's not about that, because these are just perceptions, right? Relation between perceived profit, perceived societal value. So it's not a matter of being accurate or not. The industry would have more societal industry were more profitable. They're not comparing profits to, no, that's wrong. So I got to go with B, even though I don't really like B too much here. It's the one that doesn't have an incorrect answer. So all right, we did those. I wanted to go back to 3 to 38. So I'm looking for that one overlooked influence of behavior for profit companies is the fact that. So I'm looking to answer this question in this evidence. 3 to 6 is telling me, and again, I'm going to tap my forehead and think, what am I looking for? That one strongly suggests, so it's pretty much clear, but it's not exactly explicit, an overlooked influence on the behavior of for-profit companies. So I'm looking for an overlooked influence of behavior on for-profit companies, 3 to 6. And those lines were we to society. We view for-profit companies interest upon which capital is based with inherent distrust. The more profitable they are, the more harm they do in society. Well, 3 to society. So that doesn't even address because it's not an overlooked influence. That just tells us what people think. So it can't be A on 15. It just can't be. It doesn't address the question. Because to consequences. and that is what lines? I always forget the lines. 25 to 30. Because the desire for profit is seen as selfish intent, we extrapolate to assume the activities. Again, this is not an overlooked value, so this doesn't even address the question. 31 to 33, we too lost. 31 to 33, 31 to 33. We refer to our own mundane zero-sum experiences, such as buying a car, which is seller's profit gain becomes our loss. That doesn't tell me anything about an overlooked society value, so it's got to be D, regardless of what this is. But let's test out D over here and see if it answers these. We to term, 33 to 38. We fail to consider how so an overlooked operating on a massive scale in which our profit companies need to innovate. So they innovate, behave fairly, and develop a good reputation in order to be profitable in the long term. Okay. So that definitely addresses an overlooked influence. Increases common companies' profits typically represent increased losses by consumer. No, it doesn't say that. Remember what this says. It says that we fail to think about how they need to innovate, behave fairly, and have a good reputation. So it's not that. Financial should act in ways that people regard favorably. Yeah, it could be that. Leaders of many companies are aware of people's anti-profit. No, it doesn't say anything about that. To get rid of C. While companies themselves act in selfish ways, no, it's not about that. So the answer is A. There, I got D and I got B there. Okay. Now I've learned enough about this that I'm just gonna go ahead and get this one out of the way. And again, you're using the bubble sheet. So if I skipped 11, I'm answering these. Make sure I'm putting in the right spot. Analyze research that claims to show, describe findings, analyze research, present data, discuss studies. Well, it does discuss studies. I know that. Let's see. So analyze research. It might be doing that. Describe findings. I don't think it's doing that. It's not describing findings, so I don't see it doing that. And it's not about, the main purpose isn't to present data, so it's going to be wrong there. But let's see the reasons for it. So I can kind of start eliminating based upon this initial purpose. But this is really what's going to make it right or wrong. Show that an erroneous view is less widespread than previous. No, it definitely is. They say it is widespread even in the U.S. Show that why many people maintain a specific illogical position even after recognizing it's false. No, it doesn't show that. People don't. They do kind of learn. I think it said something about that here. They could attenuate their participants' anti-profit bias if they prompted them to think about how long-term profit could encourage greater product innovation, better treatment of staff, and more concern for reputation. So it does kind of say that they can get people to, whatever attenuate means, they could, if they got them to think about how profit motives can encourage greater product innovation, better treatment of staff, and more concern for reputation. However, thinking this way doesn't seem to come naturally. So it's not about that. So I'm just going to get rid of this one here. Besides, it's not about describing the findings anyway. So showing that a mistaken belief leads to negative outcome. No, it's not that. So it's got to be D. Even whatever D says, it's got to be D, because these are clearly wrong. Showing that an inaccurate conception is firmly established within a particular population. Inaccurate conception is firmly based. Yes, it is. It does say that. Okay, and they put in this particular population. Gee, give me a break. Whatever. That's just there to say, well, it's not a particular one. Well, it was a particular one that they studied. All right. So we got these out of the way. Let's go do. I can do the vocab here. Then I got to worry about what am I looking for. We're inferring that compared with U.S. people are critical of capitalism, U.S. people are supportive of capitalism are likely to be something. And I think I know where we're going with this, because it said that people, regardless of their participants' economic knowledge or political leanings, they have that ingrained anti-profit bias. But we'll see if that's it. But let's go ahead and answer 63. Naturally, 63. So I haven't read this too much. There's not it doesn't seem to be asking me about this. I think that might be in the evidence. No, it's not. It's not even in the evidence question. So I can just basically ignore this. But let's just skim it. Another study just presented vignettes. Participants rated the exact same companies, engaged in the same business. If they're described, so the people assume that not-for-profit. Yeah, that's what I hate, that idea. Just not-for-profit means you don't pay income taxes. You take your money in salary. This is so stupid. It doesn't change. Oh, by the way, not-for-profit is College Board. College Board is an evil company. I said it. Sorry, College Board. I mean, look what you put kids through. And you're not for profit doesn't make you good, and you're profit hungry too, College Board. Hear me? All right, I'm thinking out loud here. So I'm going to go ahead and do 63. What was it? Naturally. They found they could however, this doesn't come naturally. Oh yeah, this is the however is that they could get people to think more kindly of for-profit companies if they told them about all the things they do, but it doesn't come to them naturally. Their judgments about for-profit companies are the same as when they actively encourage to assume that customers face few choices. So when they did the opposite and they told them, well, companies suck, for-profit companies suck, they held the same opinion. So in other words, naturally is their state of this holding this opinion. So it's not commonly, it is common, but naturally doesn't mean it's common. It's not obviously, it's not simply, and intuitively means they're something that if you don't know it, I know it's not simply. They don't hold this opinion simply. They don't hold it obviously. They don't hold it common. This has got to be D intuitively, but intuitively means that it's ingrained, it's part of them, which is natural. All right, we got the last two here, which is 17 and 18. What are we looking for again? That people who are compared with those who are critical of capitalism, those who are supportive of it are something. So I'm looking for evidence that shows me that people who are critical of capitalism are something compared to people who are supportive of capitalism. 62 to 63, however, do naturally. However, thinking this way doesn't seem to come naturally. Now, I just did that line, and so this is A in the evidence question. I just did that line. So does that tell me that, does that compare people who are critical of capitalism or not? No, it doesn't. So I don't think that A even addresses the question here. Participants to, so again, the evidence has to address the question before it even, because if you compare the evidence to the possible answers, you're probably going to get suckered into a wrong answer that lines up with a evidence that doesn't address the question. So address the evidence to the question and then test if it does actually address the question, then test it out. So let's say B addresses the question. Let's see if it does. 63 to 68, participants to economy. Participants based on judgments for profit were the same as when they were actively encouraged to assume the customers. Okay. And so again, this is not their opinion on they're just being told to, so this doesn't address the question either. So if it did, I could then go test out after I've tested out. I want to test out the question, then I want to test out the ones that do address the question to the possible answers. B doesn't address that possible answer in any way. Findings and leanings, 69 to 71. Let's see what this one does, 69 to 71. The findings of ingrained profit bias generally held regardless of participants. All right, so this one tells me that the ingrained bias, anti-profit bias, generally held regardless, so keyword there, that definitely answers the question here, because that regardless of people, whether they, what does it say? Whether they were, whether they had economic knowledge or political leanings. That doesn't tell me if they're pro or anti-profit or anti-capitalist, but that kind of, let's just put C here and see if it addresses. 71 to 73, this two cultures. This was a U.S. study, so it remains to be seen if the same anti-profit found. That doesn't address the question. So I'm stuck with 18. I'm stuck with C here on 18, even though I don't really think it talks about people who are critical of capitalism. But let's see what C does. C only tells me that regardless of what people know about economics or their political leanings, so I guess that their political leanings could infer pro or contrary attitudes toward capitalism, right? So I might have a socialist and I might have a right-wing capitalist, a left-wing socialist, right-wing capitalist. So that could infer people's views towards capitalism. So I can't eliminate it based upon that alone. But let's see what it does. It just tells me regardless of their knowledge or their political leanings, they hold the bias. So C is telling me more tolerant of socially harmful businesses. No, it doesn't say that at all. All it says is that regardless of what they know about economics or their political leanings, they hold the same bias. Better at reducing their anti-profit bias when prompted to think about long-term effects. That might be what they did in, I think, here, where they talked about, well, when they told people to think kindly about them, they could attenuate, they could then reduce the anti-profit bias, but that's not answering the question here. So this is where they were trying to fool you into either A or B to answer B here. So I want to get rid of that. C does not answer B here, okay? Equally bad at accurately, sorry about the phone, equally bad at accurately evaluating for-profit companies' effects on society. So whether you're for or against capitalism, yes, you're equally bad at it. So C definitely answers that. We get rid of D because C definitely answers it, but less willing to concede, no, it doesn't say anything about that. So there we go. Hope that works. I wonder if I got them all right. I'm pretty sure I did. All right, hope that helps. This is for Ambitious Cub. Again, I don't think I made any mistakes, but if I did, I'll add to this video. So if I don't say anything more here, then I got it right. I hope that helps you in the approach. I think the key thing for you, Ambitious Cub, is that make sure that the possible evidence sources answer the question, because otherwise you're going to go test them against the possible answers incorrectly, because it doesn't even address, it might address the possible reason, which is a wrong answer, but since neither one addressed the question itself, it's wrong. Hope that helps. Good luck.